Hey there, and thank you for joining us on the Designated Pundits, where we are previewing each Major League Soccer team ahead of the 2025 season. Today, we're talking about the Vancouver Whitecaps. Today, joined by Gideon Hill to preview the Vancouver Whitecaps 2025 Major League Soccer season. Make sure, if you're watching, you hit that subscribe button, or you can find us on your favorite audio platform. Just search for The Designated Pundits. We will be there. You can also find us at thedesignatedpundits.com as we preview each and every one of the 30 Major League Soccer teams. Gideon, I just had you, and I think your title was like sports broadcaster, Gideon Hill. Let us know where you're working now, where we can find you.
Yeah, working in a local junior system here in British Columbia and Canada and Vancouver area. So it's a junior hockey equivalent to like the USHL in the States. So working through that and then getting involved in soccer as much as I can. So yeah, find me on Twitter at _Gideon Hill.
Awesome. So let's get started. Today we're here to talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps. A lot of unknowns still. This is not a team who, we're 100% settled on, but we're going to go through everything the best we can. With 2 weeks left until the start of the Major League Soccer season, time is upon us. So let's get started with a brief recap of the 2024 Major League Soccer season for the Whitecaps. 15-8-15 record, right at that 500 clip. 8-4-7 at home. 7-4-8 away. 61 goals scored, 52 goals conceded, left you with a +9 goal differential, and Vancouver is eliminated by LAFC in the first round of the playoffs. Overall, a pretty average season. I remember the first few weeks, some successes there, and I remember making a lot of money on the team in the first half of the season, and then kind of lost the juice going into the second half. Talk to us a little bit about the 2024 season.
Yeah, I mean, it was good in the fact that, the start was good and the team found their away form. I think we'll touch on that, but, most away wins since 2015 for the club. So that's a bonus, but you'd expect with that many wins away from BC Place, your home record should be just as equal or better. And unfortunately this year, or the past year, wasn't. So usually the team kind of hits their peak, June, and then July, August, September tend to be difficult months. This year, the last few games, they were on a tear. I thought they actually were going to upset LAFC. They forced a third game, which they didn't do last year. So it was nice to see that, but unfortunately just couldn't get it done in the first round.
Yeah, nice 3-0 victory at home against LAFC in that second round there. Vancouver ranked 27 out of 29 in home field advantage, not because they were bad at home, just because they were pretty good away. 1.47 points per game at home, 1.32 points per game away. What could you guys do to take the next step and really find that home field advantage next year?
It's tough to say. I mean, it's been a fortress for many years. I don't know, if there was. It didn't seem like there was a different style home and away, whereas before maybe you're playing a little bit more park the bus style away from BC Place. But I think if the team can find their groove, a home and away, and play a fun style, which is something that you're going to have to play to keep the fans involved, especially with losing a guy like Stuart Armstrong this week, who is a designated player who's going to be the guy in the midfield. You lose that. How do you get fans back involved? Well, you score goals, you play exciting football, and you have a guy like Ryan Gauld and Brian White, who are two of the best in the league. So I think if you play, I think the whole season it's going to be about consistency, and if you don't find that, especially in this league with everyone getting better this year, it's going to be tough treading.
It is very tough, but you guys are a tough Western Conference opponent. You are kind of geographically isolated, especially for those Eastern Conference team. And I like to point out that your away record, which the graphic shows 7 wins, 4 draws, 8 losses, that's not too shabby. That's about the same as RSL or LA Galaxy would have done. That's a pretty good clip. So for me, it's got to get a little better at home. Let's take a look at the contributors. That's going to bring the 2024 focus a little clearer. Brian White, 15 goals, 2 assists. You had Ryan Gauld with 10 goals, 12 assists. Fafa Picault, 9 goals, 5 assists. Ryan Raposo, 3 and 4. And Sebastian Berhalter with 2 goals and 3 assists. Obviously top heavy. Obviously you have a guy like Fafa Picault no longer on the team. Not someone we expected to have 14 goal contributions last year. What do you think of when you see this chart?
Yeah, I think that, Fafa Picault was such a play driver with the way, his speed, his ability to get on the ball drive with defenses, and I think the Whitecaps are going to sorely miss that this year. Bring in a guy like Jaden Nelson, who I'm sure we'll touch on it later on. Sort of fits that mold. I don't know if it's going to be a like for like, but I think there's so much weight bearing on Ryan Gauld's shoulders that it's tough for him to play a full season healthy. And we've seen it the last couple of years, he's missed time. If you can have him play, 75, 90 minutes a match and get a goal or an assist, and Brian White part of that, and then you have a guy like maybe Pedro Vite step up this year, and maybe even Berhalter, because two of those 5 players are no longer in the team in Pico and Raposo. So you're going to rely upon White and Gauld a lot, and then guys like Nelson, Berhalter, Pedro Vite as well to kind of supplement the goal scoring up front.
Absolutely. Awesome, Scott.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, like, step up. Yes, it hurts losing kind of that Fafa Pico experience and that maybe reliability. With all the weight on Ryan Gauld, Brian White, I think what I would like to see out of Vancouver, who were, a little bit above average, but fairly middle of the road in goal scoring, would just be that to have another couple of guys at the bottom end of this table who are at like 7, 8, 9 goals scored for the season. It's that drop from like 9 to 3 that concerns me, because you guys score most of the time, but I think it's those big moments when you just need a little more contribution. Do you think there's guys like that are stepping into this team? You think there's that potential?
100%. And I think, you mentioned that, especially come playoff time, you can't rely on your top 2 guys to get goals. I mean, they're going to be part of it, but it's so tough to score during the playoffs that you have to have, 4 or 5 guys that can show up every night or show up, when the game's down to the wire. So I think with opportunity this year, like I said, Vite, Berhalter might even be a starter this year. Who knows where Nelson fits in? I think it's going to be up to opportunity, guys stepping in, and guys that maybe unexpected are going to get into the 11 and make a difference, which I think will be key for the team this year. It's going to be kind of, I hope anyways, it's scoring by committee this year, not just by 2 guys.
And Alex, do you have any apologies for Brian White sitting up at the top? 17 goal contributions.
I got to be honest. Everyone knows me since the days of Red Bulls when we lost him. I definitely did not see that coming. Congratulations on developing Brian White. I have a question about the ownership situation. In the offseason, I heard rumors about being sold. Do you think that's a contribution to the quiet offseason you guys had so far?
I don't think so. The club has routinely been late at signing players, and I don't know if that's because of being in Canada or the market or the field being turf, but there's always been signings late in February, March, even the first week of the season, guys missing the first month as they kind of integrate into the squad. So I don't think that's a contributing factor. I mean, maybe it plays into a guy's head, if the team's going to move, if they get sold the next year, do I really want to move my family across the world or across the country to stay and plant roots? But I don't think that's a huge contributing factor. Like I said, might be a piece of it, but the team's always been signing players late into the off season, and especially not meant much this year besides Jaden Nelson. So it's hard to say, but I don't think it's a huge factor.
I've got one more question for you before we kind of move on. What was the role in Vanni Sartini in setting this up, and how does that change with him being let go?
I think the formation might be tweaked a little bit. Like, I know we'll get into that, but I think the main build of this team, the way they're structured, is going to be offense, and then just building a solid back line. Like, we'll have either 4 or 3 at the back, and I think it'll be the same mentality. Like, the squad hasn't changed a whole lot. Like, you see the 2 guys there that are gone, they're offensive players. With the defense, like Tristan Blackman, Ranko Veselinovic, Bjorn Ingebrigtsen hasn't left, so you're keeping the same core. And obviously with Yohei Takaoka in goal. So that, I think, will stay the same. It's just about how the team will look moving forward in their transition game.
Let's take a look at the outgoing and incoming players. Outgoing goalkeeper Joe Bendick. Forwards Fafa Pico and Daibir Caicedo. You had Ryan Raposo, Alessandro Schopf, and Stuart Armstrong on the way out. Incoming, Tate Johnson, Jaden Nelson. You guys have 2 designated players, if my chart here is correct. That is Ryan Gauld and Andre Kubas. Is there room for a third, or do you think anything is going to get looked into ahead of the 2025 season?
Well, I know that Armstrong definitely might have been unplanned. It happened so fast. You know, 1 week he's with the team in preseason, the next he's gone to England. So I think it's hard to plan, as you guys probably know, being on the East Coast and Eastern Conference MLS teams, to plan for a designated player spot and sign a guy, because it's a limited role. You only have 3 on a team, right? So you can't go and sign a guy to a DP contract the next day. It's got to be a scouting, interviews, meetings, all those kind of things. So I don't think it's a short-term thing. It's probably a June, July fix. They're going to start looking. They might restructure a contract to open up a player. Maybe Brian White could be a DP at some point. I'm not sure, but it's going to be a summer thing. It's not an easy, quick signing. So it's disappointing to lose Armstrong, but a guy could step up and play, a DP type caliber without having that designated player tag on his contract.
All right, let's take a look at a projected depth chart. This is kind of using the 5-3-2 that they were running with a little bit last year. I understand that could change to a 4-man back line. I see kind of a big hole at right back. Maybe that might force that to be, more of a natural midfielder position there. But let's start at the back. Takioka, very good, Major League Soccer caliber starter, on the I'd say 10 best in the league. Someone I'm really interested in. That's pretty solid back there with Max Anchor, although Max Anchor is a fantastic goalkeeper name. If I had to rank him, the 10 of 10.
Yeah, I have Isaac Boma in there as well as the second stringer too. So there's some younger guys behind Takioka that were kind of forcing their hand last year as well through the Canadian Championship in the last half of the season.
Moving to the back line, you have a couple of good center backs here. I have Tristan Blackman, Ranko Veselinovic, and Matthias Laborda. Behind them, Adekube. I think that's a pretty close call there. A name that Bjorn Ing-Utvik.
Yeah, you're pretty good for
Great job, Bob.
Look at me.
Great job.
Yeah.
Bob is excellent at these Scandinavian names. We always ask him to say them online when we have a show. Excellent at it. Excellent.
Every year getting better, Bob. Every year.
Yes.
It makes up for the Hispanic names, which I'm garbage. And Bilal Halboni, what do you think is your best pairing here? And if you had to make a prediction right now, is it going 3-man or 2-man for the center back?
Yeah, I think it's going to be 3, because you have guys that can kind of swap around. Like you have Utvik, who could be a starter, Bilal Halbuni, who I think could be key this year. So you have basically 5 center backs in that 3. So I think it'll be 3 back there because of how many guys they have. And then you'll have probably Adekube left back and Edir Ocampo on the right, I guess, wing back position. So there's going to be some maneuvering around from the Whitecaps this year in regards to their formation and personnel, but I'm really excited to see, this back line of 3, which I think they'll go with, remain game after game, again, with that whole consistency notion I talked about.
What are the fullbacks going to be responsible for here? I kind of have the left mid or left wing, whatever position you want to call it. I have Ali Ahmed and Adekube, and then on the outside, Ocampo. What are the responsibilities? Are they getting forward? Are they staying back? And how do you see the pecking order breaking down?
Yeah, I think because the midfield 3, as it stands, or as it looks anyways, is quite narrow. And I think that's the way the team is played, is with the overlapping, the speed. Like a Jaden Nelson guy can play in that left wing. You have Ali Ahmed, who's probably one of the best young attackers in the league. It's a lot of offensive responsibility, but as in that same breath, you have to have defensive responsibility, because your best offense is, going throughout the whole pitch, playing attacking style, being heavy on the ball, trying to get it back and keep possession. So I think there's a lot of offensive responsibility with Ocampo and Ahmed, in this case, Adekube and Bobolina as well. You can throw those guys in there to be good and contribute to the goal scoring, but also come back and play as a 5 when the team's defending, which in late in games they have been the last season or 2.
I see a bit of a crowded midfield, although it's kind of hard to project who the starter is going to be. Kubas had a fantastic season. I think that, when he's on the field, it's just a different team. He's a game changer. He's getting paid like it. Behind him, you have Priso, Berhalter, and a bunch of guys with a little less Major League Soccer experience. Schopf. How do you see them breaking down? Is there a natural 2-8, 6-8? What is the positioning here?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Kubas and either Priso or Berhalter in the holding midfield role, and then Gald in front of those 2. I just think Kubas is, as you said, he's a game breaker. When he's not on international duty, he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the MLS. He's just a joy to watch. I like to call him a bulldog out there. The way he can win the ball back, he can tackle, gets a lot of yellow cards, but the way he plays, I mean, it makes sense that way. JC Ngannou and Jeevan Baldwin, the two guys you see in behind Priest on the depth charter. Ngannou was on loan last year. He had a bit of playing time in the 2023 season. And Baldwell's a guy who just signed an MLS contract. So it's hard to know what they're going to be. They're not going to be starters, but they could be bench guys who come in and then maybe a starter, a year or two down the road.
I see kind of the biggest hole at the number 10 position here, Pedro Vite. To me, that's suboptimal, not exactly what you want from that position. Talk about maybe something where we can upgrade there. I see, Gald steps back there once in a while. Shop I have down there. Talk about the number 10 and what it means to the squad.
Yeah, it's funny because Ryan Gauld was signed as a number 10, but it seems like he's turned into kind of a striker over the last year as him and Brian White have that great partnership, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you have a guy that needs to play basically two positions at once. So I see him dropping back a little bit, maybe putting Vite deeper alongside Kubas and maybe like a Christmas tree type midfield. And then you have Anderson Duarte and there is rumored to sign. So if he does put pen to paper, he could be, up there with Brian White or Jaden Nelson, who's not an out and out striker, he's more of a winger. You could throw him in that conversation. But I do see, like you said, I'd see if Gauld's in that position, the center attack mid, the number 10, without a doubt, he's one of the best Major League Soccer. But if he's not, is Pedro Vite your guy there, or is Gauld going to have to come back and play in that top of the diamond there?
If Gauld drops back, does Pedro Vite have it in him to step forward, do kind of an overlap and occupy a more forward position, like as an active game scenario?
I don't think he's a striker type player. He can definitely play deeper as a playmaker. I've also seen him play a little bit out wide right, not a whole lot, like as a winger, kind of inverted winger. But I don't see that position helping his development and his growth as a young player in this league. I see him being a playmaker, maybe alongside a Kubas through the middle of the park, or even having Kubas in behind him to kind of shelter his ability to get forward and make plays offensively.
Okay, so it seems like as Ryan Gauld drops deeper to find the ball, that's really going. Pedro Vite is going to struggle to find space. He's getting crowded out, getting crowded into, the holding pairing who are, who don't need him to be there, or being pushed out wide where the team is not really trying to play through.
Yeah, they're two very similar players. So it's, I think that's a tough one for any coach. It's a good problem to have because you have two guys that are somewhat capable, but if you have two of the same players in the pitch, you're losing two positions basically. So if you have Vite playing back and Gauld just in front of him, that might bode better for the team structurally.
What player outside of the projected starters here has the best chance of winning a starting position?
I think Bilal Halbouni. He's a guy that came in last year, kind of an unknown commodity. He got into some matches kind of in that midweek game where you have a Wednesday, Saturday game, like a 3-game-a-week scenario.
Yeah. He
would come in to kind of rest a starter, and I liked his ability to kind of play as a center back. He's very physical. He's got a strong build on him, and he can get the ball forward, which is something this team will need with, Gauld playing up high at this point. So I think he could probably be your guy to slot in front of a Laborda or Ocampo on the right side.
Great. So I have some questions, some 2025 storylines. I pose them as questions. They're more kind of things we're going to keep track of. May not have solid answers right now. First one is, can Vancouver improve their squad? You do have a DP left to sign. If Gideon Hill is the GM, what position are you looking to fill?
I'm looking at that left center midfielder role right beside Kubas, we just talked about in depth there. Like, you have a guy like Stuart Armstrong, who is probably going to be one of the best midfielders in MLS if he was healthy. You only got to see him in 10 matches or so around there last year. He was brilliant in that match over Portland, that 5-0 win in the wild card game. Like, he was probably one of the best players in the pitch alongside Gauld and White. That's the position I would target immediately to try and make a move. You don't have a guy internally that can play that starting role full time. Maybe Ralph Priso, but he's not a Armstrong caliber. So that's the initial kind of position I would target, would be that left center midfielder role alongside Andres Kubas.
Excellent. So the next one is, can Vancouver improve their home record? We kind of discussed this already. I think that geographically, with the travel, especially facing off against those Eastern Conference teams, it's got to get a little better for me. That's kind of where I think the disappointment in the dropped points what was had a lot of those games mid-season, losing matches at home. I kind of have the record here. Like, they lost to LAFC, Minnesota, Seattle back to back to back. I mean, those were teams geographically kind of close. Lost to Inter Miami. There's no shame in that. Drawing Austin, not an ideal, losing to RSL, losing to Charlotte, on opening day last year. Those are matches for me that need to be converted into wins. Can you guys do that this year? For me, thank you.
You have to, because you have games like Charlotte, home opener, you have capacity crowd. If you want fans in the stands, how do you win games? Is you have fan support behind you. With the ownership kind of up in the air, it's a question mark. Are fans going to want to commit to season tickets and supporting the team? Who knows? So I think that's a big part of it. But to be a top 3 team, which has been a target for this team ever since they became into MLS, they have to do better at home. And if they want the fan support and season tickets, which were up high last year because of the Inter Miami game, which Messi didn't play in, you're going to have a great home record.
Do you think that is going to be the number one thing for new head coach Jesper Sorensen?
That's where I was going with that. I had a question about the coaching situation.
Is that the number one thing? Improve the home record?
I think so. I don't know if it's the top. I mean, how much pressure do you put on a guy coming into North America, right? In that coaching role, I think the one thing that the Whitecaps had going for them was Vanni Sartini was a guy that you could get behind. He's a loyal fan support. He always got the crowd going. He was a great personality guy. So if you can have that same thing in Jesper Sorensen to get the crowd going and spark some, you get a home win on opening match, it's a whole different look to the squad. So I don't know if it's a priority for him or that he's been put pressure on, but certainly it's probably part of the conversations for the planning side of things for this MLS season.
Alex?
Scott stole my thunder a little bit. We didn't talk about the coaching change. I was very surprised in letting go of Santini last year. Why do you think he was let go, and what could this new coach bring differently that Santini has?
Yeah, I think Vanni Sartini was a guy that, like I said, personality. He came in kind of as an assistant, then he went to head coach, so he knew the system, knew the city, the fan base, the squad. I think what Jesper Sorensen will bring is a new kind of new methodology from Europe. It's a different game over there. It's different styles. I think he's got a good mind for the game. It's also kind of a free scout because you bring a guy over from overseas who's been seeing all these players that could be quality MLS players. So it's kind of, he brings a new idea, and new, I guess, opportunities for players that he's coached or coached against that maybe Whitecaps staffers or scouts don't know about initially. So yeah, it was surprising. I think what kind of led to it was the lack of, consistency. They made the playoffs for back-to-back years. They weren't able to get past LAFC. It was kind of stagnant or stale at times, it felt, with the record. So I think it was just a fresh mind behind the bench.
Yeah, and for me, it was hot and cold. It was, you started out hot, then you had a little slump in the middle, then you got hot again, slump at the end of the season, and that's not what you want to bring into the playoffs. You want to hit the playoffs running. As long as you're in the show, you have a chance, but you want to be in a good mind and a good mentality and a good fitness when you head out to get there. Let's talk a little bit about the 2025 season. Let's talk about some outcomes. What's a realistic outcome? What's the team's best possible outcome? And what is the team's worst possible outcome?
I think realistic would be top 4 or 5 finish in the West. As every year, everyone's improved. Everyone's made, splash with the cash, big signings. I think if you're looking at, what's on the message board in the off season and for this upcoming year is top 4 finish. The best probably would be a top 6, top 7 finish. And the worst would probably be getting out and getting the playoffs, losing in the first round again. I think that's your benchmark this year, is to get to that point, and hopefully, fingers crossed, not playing LAFC for the 3rd straight year. But I think getting to that point, and that's a benchmark for this team, is to get into the playoffs, find success in the playoffs, because that's where you get the fan support and you build your team and scouting network as well.
Absolutely. I think that the most likely spot is at 6, 7, 8, kind of around the turn. Worst possible outcome, unfortunately, I think it's very low. With a new head coach, things can go downhill really quickly. I wouldn't be shocked if this team missed the playoffs next season. And I would be shocked if they got a second or third seed in the West. So right now, I think that it's going to be, a 500 squad looking at that 6, 7 spot. If you can really push and get a home in the first round of the playoffs, that sounds like, I would sign up for that in a hurry. Scott.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The defining characteristic last year for me was number one, it didn't matter where they were playing. This team was going to roll out and play, and they were going to win or lose, and they had an equal chance of both. But then from a squad, you have just players who are really, really quality. And then everywhere else, everybody is just good. No big holes anywhere. Nobody where you're looking at that and being like, that guy's a problem. Everywhere, lots of really good role players. I didn't see this squad really step forward in that regard, where you're really upgrading role players into more impactful in lots of positions. And I think that's the limitation for Vancouver. I think this is the kind of squad that has enough juice that, like we saw last year, they can get into the playoffs and not be super stressed about getting in. But then when it comes to it, when other teams are actually really stepping up a gear and bringing their really impactful players into form, that's where I saw Vancouver stumble. So,
but isn't that kind of an indictment of the coaching that no one on this team got better? I mean, Brian White, you can argue, but Gauld is what he's always been. Kubas was brought in to do that. You're right. No one took that step. No one jumps off the page this year because last year was kind of boring. And I think that is a little bit of an indictment on the coach. I want to see Sebastian Berhalter come out and, earn himself a starting job. I want to see Ralph Priso, someone who he was in Toronto. Where else was he? He was in Philly or something like that before
Colorado.
that. He was a journeyman a little bit. I kind of want to see that he's still pretty young. See him take that next step up, and maybe some of that changes this year because I have a color coded chart, and it's elite is pink, high quality is red, and it goes all the way down to blue. See a lot of yellow. See a lot of middle of the pack type stuff here. It kind of leads us into the next question, and this could be a player stepping up or a signing. What is one storyline that we could follow that is going to impact the Vancouver season the most? If this team gets into a top 2 or 3 spot, why did they do that? If the team fails, what do you think the biggest driving force between their success or their failure is going to be this year?
I think it's going to be the ownership situation. I know that those things off the field can hang over a team a lot. We've seen that in the past with different storylines with things as the Whitecaps history go back 10, 15 years, has been lots that kind of gone off the field that have really impacted the team, the supporters as well. So I think if that situation doesn't resolve itself or there's not real clarity, it could definitely weigh heavy on the players, on the staff, everyone involved. The unsureness, it definitely does play a factor. So I think if that's not solved, it could be a long, frustrating season for everybody.
Alex, you got one more for us?
Yeah, I think Jaden Nelson's a big, very underrated sign. I remember him from Toronto. Kid has speed. I think that's something that Vancouver could have used. That was a perfect signing for him. I'm expecting pretty decent numbers from this kid this year. What do you hear of Jaden Nelson so far while they're in Spain in the preseason?
Yeah, I think, just what he's going to bring to this team. He's a like for like with Pico, as I mentioned off the top. You mentioned his days in Toronto. He wasn't utilized fairly, in my opinion. It was a squad that was very log jammed on the wing position with how many young guys they have. It was a perfect opportunity for him to go overseas and then come back. So I think he's going to bring speed. He's very young, so he kind of fits the mold of the squad, how young this team is. And I think it's going to be exciting for him to come in and play in his home country again. He's Canadian, trying to get himself back in the national team. I think it's perfect timing for him, and he's going to bring some goal-scoring threat for this squad.
Now, we know a little bit about rivalry here. This is usually Alex's last question.
Yeah.
Who do you consider your biggest rival?
I'd say right now, probably Portland Timbers.
Ooh, I thought I was going to go Seattle. All right.
I was thinking Seattle, but judging by how the knockout round went, where we went in there to Providence Park in the home game and pumped them 5-0. Like I don't.
Yeah, that's gonna leave a mark. Yeah, that's gonna sting a little bit. Yeah.
It's not gonna be an easy couple matchups.
Look up at that game. Yeah.
They might answer you, but you know.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, great stuff. Thank you again, Gideon Hill. Let us know one more time where you can find your work.
Yeah, on Twitter @_ Gideon Hill as well.
Awesome, guys. Thank you for checking in on the Designated Pundits. Remember, all 30 Major League Soccer teams, if you're watching live, 6 o'clock in just about 25 minutes, we'll be with Toronto, a little Canadian special going on today. Thank you again, Gideon, for being here with us, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is the Designated Pundits. Make sure you click that bell icon so you get notified when we go live, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.